This is my list of who I think are the best defensive chess players. It's very hard to objectively compare the defensive skills of different players across different eras. As with all aspects of chess, I think defensive skills have improved with the invention of computer chess and the introduction of engines to help us analyse our games. With that being said, I believe players should still be judged by what they did against their contemporaries. Once again, this list is highly subjective. If you have your own list, please post in the comments section below. Originally this list was actually going to be 10 players, but as I'll mention later in the video, I had to fit another player in, because I just simply couldn't leave them out. But now here's the list. Number 11, Viswanathan Anand. Anand is not your traditional defensive player. At a younger age, he was actually seen as a rather aggressive player known as the Lightning Kid. He was known for his quick thinking and blitz titles, but I've included him in the number 11 spot because his ability to control positions and hold losing positions is how he's remained a top contender to this day. Whilst many of his contemporaries have wilted away, Anand still remains in the world's elite. He's a multiple world champion and was often a thorn in Kasparov's side. He even had a great slogging match against Magnus Carlsen in the World Championships and pushed Carlsen very close. Anand was one of the first few grandmasters to utilise the power of computers and databases. The computer assistants no doubt helped him to look for resources in positions that looked lost or positionally worse. Number 10, Anish Giri. I came, I saw, I drew. Although there are many memes out there where he's often referred to as the artist or drawish Giri, contrary to popular belief, Giri's drawing numbers are lower than many of the world's elite. Giri's playing style is actually not boring, but his safe and conservative style means his games usually end in many draws. He famously achieved a perfect score in the 2016 Candidates Tournament, 14 draws in 14 games. His infamous streak of 14 draws at the 2016 Candidates Tournament is illustrative and led to him being the butt of many jokes, such as Chess24's April Fool's piece about Giri, writing a book entitled My 60 Memorable Draws. Giri does often ruin winning positions, leading to the nickname Vanish Giri. However, he's also incredibly resourceful in worse positions, rarely losing. He is often regarded as easier to beat Magnus Carlsen than Giri. For a long time, he was the only top player to never have lost to Magnus Carlsen. Number 9, Sergei Karyakin. Karyakin's defensive skills are legend, and it's fittingly named Russia's Minister of Defence. After his World Championship match against Magnus Carlsen, Karyakin is now considered as the greatest defensive player in the world at this moment in time anyway. He successfully defended inferior positions against World Champion Magnus Carlsen, who himself is known for grinding out wins in slightly superior positions. This is especially seen in the World Chess Championship 2016 matches games 3 and 4. Karyakin has no fears about entering endgames, with a smaller disadvantage if this means avoiding unnecessary complications. However, Karyakin has great calculational skills, which aids his ability to defend. You don't reach number 4 in the world though by just defending. As they say, attacking is the best form of defence, and Karyakin certainly has it in his locker to switch attack mode like a cornered honey badger. His ability to defend nearly any position has frustrated more opponents than just Magnus. Number 8, Anatoly Karpov. The boa constrictor, as he is sometimes called, is one of the strongest players of all time. Karpov often played without any risk but managed to punish even the tiniest of errors by his opponents. Karpov's play was methodical, slow but ultimately unforgiving, and could dismantle many of his opponent's positions. Karpov is the master of prophylaxis play and shutting down an opponent's counterplay. He's obviously a great player winning the World Championships on numerous occasions, and perhaps defensive may not be the correct term, but often Karpov would prefer a closed position with a space advantage as opposed to a wild game with lots of tactics. In this respect, I think Karpov is a very positional player that plays to the strengths he knows. He had the ability to rack up win after win, but he did it with very little risk, playing a solid prophylactic style. Karpov actually said this about his own game. Let us say the game may be continued in two ways. One of them is a beautiful tactical blow that gives rise to variations that don't yield to precise calculations. The other is clear positional pressure that leads to an endgame with microscopic chances of victory. I would choose the latter without thinking twice. If the opponent offers keen play, I don't object, but in such cases I get less satisfaction, even if I win, than from a game conducted according to all the rules of strategy with its ruthless logic. Number 7, Jose Raul Capablanca. Another all-time great was Capablanca, who was practically unbeatable at his best. At one point he went undefeated for 8 years, and as an adult he only ever lost 34 serious games. He was probably the first player in the history of the game who was able to play with little risk against very strong players. I'm adding Capablanca in this list because he played with a very positional style. His positional judgment and endgame play was far superior to any other players of the time. Any attempt to attack Capablanca were often refuted and detrimental to his opponent. Capablanca was also a great defensive player, but his play was often considered ruthless and efficient. A game against James Frank Marshall was an incredible defensive display when Marshall sprang a deeply analysed prepared variation on him, which he refuted while playing under the normal time limit. Again, you don't go 8 years undefeated without having some serious defensive skills. Number 6. Magnus Carlsen. Did you really think I would leave Magnus out? Originally this was going to be a top 10 list, but I simply had to add Magnus into it to make it the top 11. So I'm sorry, but I've seen Magnus hold too many games to not include him in this list. Everyone wants a piece of the world champion, and it certainly isn't easy putting away 2,600 and 2,700 FIDE rated players on regular occasions. As this video gets released, Magnus also has an unbeaten streak of 120 games. And who knows, it could probably be a lot more. You don't get this streak if you can't defend well. Although Magnus is considered strong in all areas, his ability to convert minor advantages into wins is his real strength, and Magnus seems to have an amazing ability to correctly evaluate positions intuitively. Magnus's endgames are also incredibly versatile, and even when defending lost positions, we've seen multiple occasions where he's simply worn his opponent down and switched the evaluations to win. Magnus plays solid, accurate moves, and that's what defence is all about. Carlsen is also an incredible rapid and blitz player, which has often come in handy when trying to save a position or completely flip an evaluation on its head. Number 5. Ulf Andersson. Also known as Ulf the Wolf, Ulf is the strongest Swedish player of all time, and he is known for having arguably the driest, most uninteresting, tedious, dull and boring style in the history of chess. This may sound harsh, but Andersson has always aimed for positions with minimal risk and purposely steered his games into very technical endgames, which is his arena where the suffering of his opponents begins. After exchanging many pieces into an endgame, he simply grinds down his opponents. Ulf is fully energised in his attempts to scupper his opponent's play. Andersson is another example of a great prophylactic player, using openings like the hedgehog to foil any attack their opponent may have. He waits patiently with his own pieces and slowly increases his advantage. His patient play often rewards him with a slight edge in endgames, which is often enough to allow him to defeat very strong players. Andersson is again, like many in this list, a solid positional player, and is famous for winning seemingly unwinnable endgames, which often turn out to be very long games. Number 4. Peter Leko. Leko was an early bloomer in his teens and has been part of the world chess elite for a long time. In his 20s he was a top 5 player, and he came very close to beating Vladimir Kramnik in a world championship match, where he ended the match 7-7. Affectionately nicknamed Draco, or Dracula of Hungary, because his positions would always peter out, Leko often became the mockery of many chess fans. He could struggle winning good positions, but rarely had any trouble holding bad ones, even against the strongest players in the world. Leko is often criticised for his defensive approach to the game, but ultimately he was one game away from being world champion. Despite criticism that his style leads to drawish chess, his consistent style has seen him remain in the elite since he was a teenager and win multiple elite level tournaments. Leko was an absolute nightmare opponent for anyone who needed a big win. In his words, "I like to play in a clean and clear way, and I am definitely not the type of guy who takes unnecessary risks. I believe much more in the logic of our game, rather than gambling on your opponent's nerves." Recently Leko's rating wasn't what it used to be, but there is no doubt in the past Leko has had some great performances and is no doubt a great defensive player. Number 3. Vladimir Kramnik. Sometimes called the Iceman because of his cool, calm, collected demeanour and his impenetrable style of chess, Kramnik has solidified his place in the top 3. Kramnik has basically been the most difficult player to beat in the world since the turn of the century. Garry Kasparov describes Kramnik's style as pragmatic and tenacious. Kramnik is a super solid player, and still to this day is one of the toughest opponents to defeat. Kramnik lost only one game in over 100 games leading up to the match with Kasparov, including 80 consecutive games without a loss. The match was viewed as the unstoppable force versus the immovable object, and the match did not disappoint. Kasparov did not defeat Kramnik during their 2000 World Championships match, partly due to Kramnik's use of the Berlin defence. Kramnik's strategy seems to have been win with white and draw with the black pieces. Of course, a drawish defensive style attracts commentators who despise this kind of play, and some often refer to him as Drawnik. Kasparov found himself banging his head against the Berlin Wall, so to speak, and Kramnik managed to subdue one of the greatest players of all time. I've added Kramnik in at number 3 because he is also a well-respected player by many of the world elites, and rightly so. He has won numerous championships and to this day can still mix it with the younger generation. As of this video, he has the joint 8th highest rating of all time. Due to his use of the Berlin, Kramnik is known for his endgame skills. He can take you into the endgame with little advantage and squeeze out a victory. Ultimately, I would deem Kramnik as a great positional and analytical player who excels in many parts of the game. His noted passive style is attributed to his Berlin opening versus Kasparov, but it's fair to say Vladimir can excel in many types of positions, and that's why he's so high up on the list. Number 2, Emanuel Lasker. Here I've placed the great Emanuel Lasker as number 2. Lasker is often regarded as a psychological king of chess. Reti believes that Lasker often played inferior moves that he believed would stifle his opponent. Rather than playing the board, Lasker played the opponent, meaning he didn't make the best moves, but rather the ones that would make his opponent most uncomfortable. Lasker himself is said to have a cool head. Even if he lost a game, he would keep his temperament under check and adapt to various styles that he faced in matches and strong tournaments. Thanks to players like Lasker, positional players started to become more common, and it could be said that Lasker played his part in conquering this romantic style of chess that was so popular until players like himself and Steinitz came along. Max Erber opinioned that the reason behind Lasker's success was his exceptional defensive technique, and that's almost all there is to say about the defensive chess can be demonstrated by examples from the games of Lasker and his active defence. Vladimir Kramnik said he realised that different types of advantage could be interchangeable. Tactical edge could be converted into strategic advantage and vice versa. The famous win against Capablanca at St. Petersburg in 1914, which Lasker needed in order to retain any chance of catching up with Capablanca, is sometimes offered as evidence of his psychological approach. Ruben Fine described Lasker's choice of opening the exchange variation of the Ruy Lopez as innocuous but psychologically potent. However, an analysis of Lasker's use of the variation throughout his career concludes that he had excellent results with white against top-class opponents, and sometimes used it in a must-win situation. In Capablanca's opinion, no player surpassed Lasker in the ability to assess a position quickly and accurately. Capablanca also wrote that Lasker was so adaptable that he played in no definite style, and that he was both a tenacious defender and a very efficient finisher of his own attacks. He received very high praise from so many players, and this is why he takes the number 2 spot. Number 1, Tigran Petrosian. The number 1 spot goes to Tigran Petrosian. Petrosian's cautious playing style was well suited for match play, as he could simply wait for his opponent to make mistakes and then capitalise on them. In 1963, Petrosian won the match against Botvinnik with a final score of 5-2, with 15 draws, securing the title of world champion. The first defender, as Kramnik called him, is widely regarded as the greatest defensive player of all time. Petrosian defended his way to the world championship title in the 1960s. The master of prophylactic play was an almost impossible opponent at his best, as pointed out by these quotes. Playing Petrosian is like trying to put handcuffs on an eel, there is nothing to grip. Winning the Soviet Championship is easier than to win a game against Petrosian. Petrosian can smell danger 20 moves ahead. Petrosian was a conservative, cautious and highly defensive chess player who was strongly influenced by Nimzovich's ideas of prophylaxis. He made more effort to prevent his opponent's offensive capabilities than he needed to make use of his own. He very rarely went on the offensive unless he felt his position was completely secure. This style of play often led to draws, especially against other players who preferred to counter-attack. Nonetheless, his patience and mastery of defence made him extremely difficult to beat. Petrosian's consistent ability to avoid defeat earned him the nickname Iron Tigran, and is considered by many to be the toughest opponent to defeat. Often Petrosian preferred to play closed openings, like the Sicilian Nido variation and the French defence, and as white he often played the English opening. Petrosian would often move the same piece multiple times in a few moves, confusing his opponents in the opening and threatening draws by free-fall repetition in the endgame. In a game against Mark Taimanov during the 1955 USSR Chess Championships, Petrosian moved the same rook 6 times in a 24-move game, with 4 of those moves occurring on consecutive turns. Petrosian's style of play, although highly successful for avoiding defeats, was criticised as being dull. Chess enthusiasts saw him as ultra-conservative, and his style was often seen as unwelcome, contrast to popular image of the Soviet chess scene at the time, which was seen as daring and indomitable. But Petrosian, in the words of former world champion Vladimir Kramnik, was the first defender with a capital D. A consequence of Petrosian's style of play was that he did not score many victories, which in turn meant he very rarely won tournaments, but he often finished second or third. However, his style was extremely effective in match play, and this is why he deserves the #1 spot. So that's my top 11 defensive chess players of all time. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you have your own list, please do post it as well. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in more chess videos to come.